prosecution of computer and cyber crimes, to facilitate international cooperation in dealing with computer and cybercrime matters and for connected purposes. Among the objectives of this bill is to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of computer systems, programs, and data, prevent the unlawful use of computer systems, facilitate the investigation and prosecution of cyber crimes, and also facilitate international cooperation on matters covered under this particular act. If you're just joining us, we do expect business of the National Assembly to begin any moment from now. This broadcast is brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in conjunction with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. This particular broadcast is available on Bunge TV as well as KBC Channel 1. And right now, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Justin Muturi, is walking into the chambers. He's taking a bow, and what that means is that business is about to begin.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
I'll be making that communication when the delegates come. Can proceed.
Order number 3, messages.
Wait, try. Remove it. Remove it.
Honourable members, this message from the President, number 007 of 2018. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order number 42, subsection 1 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I wish to report to the House that I have received a message from His Excellency the President seeking the National Assembly's approval of a nominee for appointment as a member of the Judicial Service Commission, JSC. In the message, the President conveys that the Court of Appeal elected the Honorable Justice Mohammed Abdullahi Warsame, Justice of Appeal, as its representative to the Judicial Service Commission, as required under Article 171, Clause 2, Paragraph C of the Constitution. His Excellency the President now seeks the approval of the National Assembly before appointing the same judge as required under Article 250, Clause 2, Paragraph B of the Constitution. Section 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act provides that the relevant committee of the House will consider the suitability or otherwise of the nominees and table its report for consideration by the House within 14 days from the date the notification of nomination is conveyed to the House. Further, the Act requires that the public be given 7 days notification to submit their views regarding the suitability or otherwise of the nominee proposed for appointment to an office requiring parliamentary approval. In this regard, and in accordance with the provisions of Article 259, Clause 5, Paragraph A of the Constitution, read together with Section 5 of the same Act, the 7 days notification to the public shall start running on the day following the day when the notice is published in the dailies. Honorable members, given the critical role played by the Judicial Service Commission, it is advisable that the relevant committee expeditiously proceeds to notify the nominee and the public, commence the approval hearings after the 7-day notification period, and table its reports when through with the hearings to enable the House to consider the matter within the statutory timelines and conduct the process contemplated under Article 250, Clause 2, Paragraph B of the Constitution. This message, together with the curriculum vitae of the nominee, therefore stands committed to the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs for consideration. However, given that the 14 days for the House to finalize on the manner will lapse during the short recess period between March 30th and April 9th, 2018, and advise the committee to seek necessary extension of the timeline for consideration of this matter in due course. I thank you, members.
Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Leader of Majority.
Mr. Speaker, the chamber is very cold, extremely.
The matter is being addressed.
Yes, because the Honorable Shelley was standing on a point of order just to tell you that. So I told him I can convey. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Tuesday, March 20th, 2018. The National Transport and Safety Authority, Operations of Commercial Vehicles, Regulations 2018, and the Explanatory Memorandum. 2, the Report Institute for the year that ended 30th June 2014, and 30th June 2015, and 30th June 2016, and the certificate therein. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The first ones are to be referred, the regulations, to the Committee on Delegated Legislation to act in accordance with the standing orders. Honorable Wanjiru Chege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Tuesday, March 20th, 2018, on the report of the Committee on Health on the alleged sexual assault, breakdown of equipment, surgical mix-up, and general operation of Kenyatta National Hospital. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Kisang, Chair of ICT Committee.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Tuesday, March 20th, 2018. Report of the Committee on Communication, Information and Innovation on the consideration of the Computer and Cyber Crimes Bill 2017. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
The Honorable Rose Museo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion. That aware that there are over 200 classified types of mental disorders, the most common ones being clinical depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar disorder, anxiety disorder, schizophrenia, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Concerned that Kenya's mental health policy estimates that about 25% of outpatients and about 40% of inpatients suffer from mental health conditions, with the most frequent diagnosis of mental illness made in general hospital settings being depression, substance abuse, stress and anxiety disorders. Deeply concerned that the current worrying trend of increased domestic violence among Kenyan families has resulted in suicides, deaths, injuries, psychological trauma, orphaned and unstable children, noting that the prevalence of mental disorders may also be attributed to the noted cases of suicide, homicides, and violence at household level. Further, noting that despite the strategies and guidelines that the government has put in place towards achieving the highest standard of mental health, prevalence of mental disorders remains high. This House urges the government to urgently establish programs and interventions to encourage uptake of counseling services among individuals, families, and communities to mitigate effects of mental disorders. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Wanjiru Chege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Health on the alleged sexual assault, breakdown of equipment, surgical mix-up, and general operations of Kenyatta National Hospital, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, March 20, 2018, pursuant to provisions of Standing Order number 2165E. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Kisang. Oh, yours was a report on a bill.
I've already given out.
Very well, very well, very well. Next order.
Order number 7, statements.
Honourable members, I wish to, before we proceed to the next order, to draw the attention of the House to an item in the appendix of today's order paper titled 0 Hour Statements. Just for the information of members, Standing Order number 43 allows the Speaker to provide an opportunity to members to make general statements of topical concern every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. This is not a new practice. In fact, the use of this procedure, known as 0 Hour, was popular in the 7th and 8th parliaments and part of the 9th parliament, but gradually diminished with time. In this regard, I want to note that any member making a statement during 0 Hour will speak for not more than 3 minutes, and I may allow brief comments by other members. Further, a debate on a particular statement is without resolution, and therefore, any matters raised may not fall under matters for follow-up by the committees of the Committee on Implementation. I thank you, honourable members. It therefore means that today at 6:30 p.m., if you look at the appendix on the standing orders, the member for Mogotio constituency, the Honorable Dr. Tuyotoek, at 6:30 will rise at 0 Hour and make some certain statements two of which I have approved regarding his constituency and some alleged harassment of his constituents. So whoever it is that will be on the chair at 6:30, it will be 0 hour, which means that you can speak about not a happy hour. The member for community, I'm sure your mind is drifting into some other activities. So at that time, the members are at liberty to make comments of general nature, but mainly, preferably matters which are topical. But of course, what could be topical could be what is happening in your village. If you think it is sufficiently topical, at that time you are at liberty to rise in your place and say whatever it is that you think could be captured in the answers as having been topical in your opinion. Let's proceed to the next one. Honorable Koinange.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to give the following statement on behalf of the Committee on Administration and National Security, which I chair, requesting for an extension period for the consideration of the Kenya Coast Guard Services Bill 2017. Honorable Speaker, the Committee on Administration and National Security was scheduled to meet with the stakeholders on the first week of March 2018 to consider the Kenya Coast Guard Service Bill 2017. However, the House went for a post-election seminar in Mombasa from 4th to 8th of March 2018. Consequently, the committee rescheduled the meeting with stakeholders for Monday, 12th March 2018. Honorable Speaker, in a letter dated Monday, 12th March 2018, the committee was informed that the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government was out of the country attending to a bilateral security meeting with stakeholders on Thursday, 22nd March 2018, and thereafter table report on the floor of the House. Honorable Speaker, it is in this regard that the committee is requesting for more time to undertake stakeholders' engagement. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
So how much more time are you seeking?
1 more week, Honorable Speaker.
Very well.
Thank you.
The bill will not be considered, even though it's on the under paper. Honourable members, before we move to the next order, allow me to recognize the presence in the Speaker's Gallery of students from Naivasha Girls Secondary School, Naivasha constituency, Nakuru County, and those from Kangema High School, Kangema constituency, Murang'a County. And in the public gallery, those from Kibaoni Secondary School, Mwala constituency, Machakos County. They are all welcome to observe proceedings in the National Assembly this afternoon. Next order.
Order number 8, the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bill number 7 of 2018, third reading.
Honourable members, debate on this bill was concluded last week, and what remained was for the question to be put, which I hereby do, that the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bill number 7 of 2018, be read a third time. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes of it.
A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the equitable division of revenue raised nationally between the national and county governments in the 2018-19 financial year and for connected purposes. Order number 9, the Nairobi Metropolitan Area Transport Authority Bill, National Assembly Bill number 41 of 2017, second reading.
Very honored members, when the House adjourned last Thursday, a total of 16 members had contributed to this bill, including the Honorable Rehab Mukami, the Honorable Tuwei Kipkurui, the Honorable Kitayama Marwa, the Honorable Waihenya Dirango, the Honorable Ridikiri Muruidhania, the Honorable John Mose, the Honorable Jude Jomo, the Honorable Dhuku Kwenya, the Honorable Daniel Manzo, the Honorable Shamala Jennifer, the Honorable John Kanyuithia, the Honorable John Waluge Koi, and the Honorable Mutinda Mule. I will be giving some clarification and direction regarding an issue that was raised by the member for Mathare. I think it represents Mathare, the Honorable Oluoch, on constitutionality or otherwise of this bill, and on an issue of res sub judice that he claimed this bill touched on. But debate may continue. Before I leave the chair, I will give that communication. See, the member for Ruaraka is the first on the floor.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Of all the people that the Hansard have captured as having spoken on this bill, only Honorable Ndirangu comes from Nairobi. The rest are peripheral and rural. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. This is a bill concerning Nairobi metropolitan area. And I feel with a lot of passion that I should discuss this bill, because if we leave it for the honorable members who respectfully represent the rural constituencies, we may find ourselves in a situation where they import the very good ideas from the rural into the metropolitan. Mr. Speaker, sir, just to conclude the bit of constitutionality, as Mr. Speaker, you are thinking about other issues raised by Honorable Oluoch. I was thinking about this bill that only concerns Nairobi. And I was wondering if we have a bill or a piece of legislation which does not seem to have a national effect, how does this bill sit with our program of legislation? I know that we can have a stand-alone bill which can discuss a specific matter, but I think the policy we have adopted in this House is to have bills which have national legislation. I say so because it is a good idea to have very beautiful ideas for Nairobi. But Nairobi has the same problems with Mombasa, has the same problems with Nakuru, has the same problems with Kisumu. This, and Garissa, which is aspiring to be a metropolitan soon. I think that if the ministry is concerned about the policy, which I have had the advantage of reading, Mr. Speaker, then a legislation should have come which seemed to, refer to all the metropolis, not just a specific part of the country. Now, if you want to see how ridiculous this bill is, consider Clause 8, in which the bill proposes a council, and it has in mind something which sits a little above the board, and then there is the permanent, the cabinet secretaries for transport, for treasury, and then now they are governors. I think the thinking of this bill is that the governors of the peripheral areas, including Nairobi, then sits on this bill. Well, yes, I know that Honorable Ishunga has a big problem because he is just, his one foot is in town, but all his uncles and aunties are in the peripheries. But, Mr. Speaker, look at Clause 8. And I want members to consider Clause 8, for example. If, therefore, you are going to have a council such as this, and yes, you see, you are having all these governors as members of this council, where is the place for the National Assembly? The 17 of us are the arm by which this city breathes. The 17 of us are the people that make things work in this city. And may I extend it, even if you're talking about Kiambu, if you're talking about Murang'a, or if you're talking about all those counties that surround Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, sir,
there's an intervention for the member for Kikuyu.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I stand on the question of relevance because the Honorable T.J. Kajwang of the famed fake CJ is talking about 17 of us. And he's gone at length to talk about those he's calling peripherals and rural. And this bill, Mr. Speaker, as the good Honorable T.J. Kajwang is aware, is about the metropolis. And therefore, when he continues talking about the 17 of us, I'm wondering who are these 17 of us? And I was assuming he's talking about the 17 members of parliament from Nairobi County. But there are also other members of parliament from Kajiado, from Murang'a, from the greater Kiambu that has 12 members of parliament who are not peripheral, who are part of the metropolis. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, maybe the good TJ should restrict himself to issues relevant to what is provided for in the bill, because the bill is not talking about Nairobi County. It's talking about the Nairobi metropolitan area.
Well, the honor members, you know, that is a point of argument. There's nothing out of order in what he's saying. He's entitled to those views. However, even if you think he is mistaken, get a chance and correct him when you speak to the bill.
Mr. Speaker, the member for Kikuyu forgets that I am government. I'm serikali, Mr. Speaker, sir. and the member for Kikuyu, although he has corrected himself, before he said that I was a fake CJ, but when he sat down, he said that I'm his very good friend, the Honorable, the Chief Justice. Mr. Speaker, I withdraw the sentiments that I could be the Chief Justice, but I may be in a very near future in the government, on the people's government that is coming very soon. But Mr. Speaker, I am raising a very serious issue here. The issue I am raising for the National Assembly is that where is the nexus? Where is the adjunct between leaders of the county vis-a-vis leaders of national government? We sit here as members of leaders of national government. So how does, for example, my learned senior, when he is a member in Murang'a County, how does he interface with the management of this authority? How does he do that? And if it is considered that governors should sit as the council, where is the corresponding thinking on how national government will be served in this council? I would have thought, for example, yes, I know that we are going to propose amendments, but I would have thought, for example, that the bill would have said in clause 8 that two others nominated by members of the national government or members of the National Assembly in that county. Somehow, then there would be an interface of the National Assembly or national government vis-a-vis the county. But a bigger issue has to do with consequential legislation. Even if we pass this bill today, and we have not touched on County Government Act, we have not touched on Traffic Act, and we have not acted on relevant legislation, to what avail, to what effect would this legislation have unless there is consequential legislation which are coming either as standalone or in statute miscellaneous legislation or in this very bill to amend the other legislation? Otherwise, we are going to act in futility, Mr. Speaker, sir. But the biggest thing I have is public participation. Honorable Ichunga has a problem that I am talking about the 17 of us. The bill is Nairobi Metropolitan. It is not Kikuyu Metropolitan. And Nairobi has 17 members. In fact, last week, as we were talking with the cabinet secretary concerned, we had not even seen the bill in the first place. We had to interact with him, so we were wondering, how did you do public participation? And you know how we went around it. that this animal called public participation is an unruly one. I'm sure he must have sat down with my very good friends in the business community in Nairobi, and I'm sure he must have consulted a few people from Dagoretti Slaughterhouse, you know, to enrich the bill. But how I wish that members of Nairobi County, Murang'a County, Kiambu County, where my honorable member comes from, were consulted in some very, with some depth about how these things are going to happen. Member for Kikuyu, for example, is very cheerful here, but I am sure that this bill, from what I have heard and what I have seen the bill proposes, will write some of his constituents who are very good at matatu business. They will be out of business the next day. And these are the people who are voting for him. To what extent have these people been involved? Mr. Speaker, so the question of public participation is an important issue.
There's an intervention from the leader of the majority party.
Mr. Speaker, I don't want to interrupt my good friend, Honorable TJ Kajwang, but Mr. Speaker, Honorable TJ Kajwang should be aware that the committee tabled a report where they have met all these stakeholders, including the Matatu people. So if you get a copy of the report, you'll find it. And secondly, this bill draws its powers, Mr. Speaker, from Article 189, 2 of the Constitution, where 2 levels of government can share resources to make sure a certain function is efficient, is effective. So I think the report is the one that he has not gone through. Even Murang'a, Kiambu, Machakos, the governors' consultative forums,
I wish, Leader of Majority, you could have just been patient a little. I have looked at the report, and this is where we, National Assembly, we are taken for a ride. If you, as a member sitting here, nobody has consulted you on anything, and things which are concerning your people directly, and they claim from the ministry that they have talked to some people, surely, unless it is this thing about opinion poll, where everybody does opinion poll, but they never get to talk to you, who are these people being consulted, and what is this public participation? And we were there, the 17 members of Nairobi, and none of them ever knew that there was a legislation coming. I do not know if people from Kiambu or Murang'a did know, or Kajiado, but I can tell you, Leader of Majority, that I have seen that report and they purported to have seen people, but I'm saying that members of the National Assembly are an integral part of this, are stakeholders, that if we have not been consulted, I think there's a problem with participation. But secondly, it could be anchored on 182 of the Constitution, 89 of the Constitution. That is fine. And because they are shared functions. The problem I have is County Governments Act has legislation on how the counties, the matatus, for example, will run in Nairobi. If the authority seems to suggest that there is another way, for example, the authorities will own buses in this country, the authorities will remove the matatus that are there. How are these things going to run when the county also has their systems? These are the questions we are asking. So these are big issues that, Leader of Majority, if you don't mind, we can probe with some honesty. Mr. Speaker, I think this is a good bill, but I think this bill should be uniform, should be national. We should have Metropolitan Area Transport Authority. Then we would have schedules that discuss Mombasa, schedules that discuss Nakuru, and all these other places, because they are different. And their transport needs are different. With that, Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank you for a little more time that you have given me. But I have done my research, and I said, the chair of the responsible for the committee, if you would mind calling some of us even at this late hour, to be able to interface with you and give you some more ideas. Because fortunately, you come from Lodwar, and you may have not seen the problems of traffic jam in Nairobi. If you would come, we would give you some practical information about how Nairobi is run, about how wealth in Nairobi is created, and how those things should be held. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Sorry, do I get the... Are these members who are putting interventions about to contribute, or is it... So we go back to the bill. Member for Kipipiri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this bill, and perhaps even before I proceed, I'd like to just draw attention of the honorable member who just finished, that this bill is not just about metropolis. It's about creating a systematic transport system for Nairobi and its environs. So, and it's specific to a certain area. I know that because I started the initial work on this bill when I was Minister for Transport, so it's an old bill. And it's been developed over time. And the whole thinking about this transport system for Nairobi is if you're coming from Murang'a, or from Kiambu, or from Kajiado, and because of the devolution of transport to the counties, if all these counties have different systems for managing transport, you end up with a very discordant way of doing things behind this bill. So let's not look at it as just something that is generic to every metropolis. When you go to Mombasa, if there's transport systems in Mombasa, it just might be affecting Kilifi, Kwale, and Mombasa, not necessarily all the other counties. So that's one of the things that I just wanted to help Honorable Kajwang to appreciate as part of the Nairobi stakeholders. And I was surprised the honorable member for Mathare is actually expressing shock that he has not seen this bill. He was not aware of this bill. Yet notice was actually given in this house of a bill coming. And it was available in table 8. And as a stakeholder in Nairobi, I would have expected him to be the first one to actually pick it and seek where the consultations are taking place and come here and guide us in terms of some of the areas that we have left out so that the chairman of the Transport Committee can get the benefit of what is missing within this bill. But that's said and done. Mr. Speaker, I do believe that we should all support it. I know there has been some concerns that have been expressed, which Mr. Speaker will be guiding us on. But the most important thing is to know that this authority will now, on a long-term basis, and devoid of the politics that comes with the elections every 5 years. We're talking about a corporate that can remove all these politics, remove all these issues of the politics of the day, and look at the management of our transport systems into the future. And coming up with the plans every 10 years. We are not just talking of the Honorable Kajwang being a member for the 5 years and some of the things he wants to do within that 5 years, but something that transcends generations of leadership, because we're talking a long-term view in terms of the growth of the cities, the growth of those metropolis. When Nairobi eventually joins up with Kajiado, when Kiambu joins up with Nairobi, and how you interconnect this, the development taking place, the within each of those cities, how do the transport systems get enlarged so that, as we are seeing now in Upper Hill, how do you then plan for the vehicular traffic? How do you plan for the trains? How do you plan for all these other things coming? But within a holistic planning framework, rather than each standalone plan. So it's something, a lot of work has been done on this, and if you're interested for the members of parliament who are affected within this, studies have been done for a long time to actually come, sponsored by ADB, sponsored by the Japanese, and there's a lot of wealth within the ministries of transport, and that you will will guide you in terms of how you then react to this. So I actually support this, and I do hope that this can be fast-tracked, so that the traffic jams in Nairobi become a thing of the past. Movement of the people becomes easy, and that then we can move into the 24-hour economy because people have reliable transport systems that take them like we see in every city. And Mr. Speaker, I do remember, but just about the same time we were looking at this, Dubai as a city was looking at creating its rail system. And everyone thought that a rail system, an intercity within a tram system, a fast train system within Dubai, that was a waste of time. Now, if you get to Dubai today, that train is always full and is moving people and has decongested the roads, removed the number of vehicles because people want to move in the fastest way possible. So I'm hoping that when we get all this, and now with the SGRs connecting people into Mombasa and eventually up to Malaba, that we are then going to have all these nodes interconnected to our train system, and the buses, as is happening in Addis, because we are almost lagging behind. We started together. You see, you go to Addis Ababa and you'll see what is happening in terms of the transport, and hopefully also that we'll eventually sort out the issues of the matatus and the buses and the kind of the desired transport systems that we actually require for this country. So, Mr. Speaker, I could go on and discuss. It's something I'm very passionate about, and I would like to welcome the Honorable Kajwang and his colleagues. I'll get you more details of this, and if there's any fears, then you'll be able to rest assured that indeed this is the best thing for Nairobi and the residents of Nairobi and all the people who surround this area. And perhaps to also just explain that there are no politics in this. It's a good bill, and I do hope we all support it. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support.
Leader of the Minority Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me also contribute to this bill. Mr. Speaker, first there is this controversy as to whether this bill should be before us or this bill is misplaced, so to speak. I have been looking at the Constitution and wondering, looking at the functions that the responsibilities we have given to the counties. And yes, it is true that one of the functions of the counties is to look at issues regarding traffic, regarding transport in terms of traffic management, street lighting, traffic and parking, county roads. And looking at it from that perspective, you can safely say that this is a function that should go to the county government of Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, looking at the importance of the city of Nairobi, then one may also look at it that it is a national issue and it is a national concern. And that really negates what our Chief Justice T.J. Kajwang mentioned about us being rural. Really, when it comes to Nairobi, we can never be rural. It concerns all of us because Nairobi actually controls the largest percentage of the economy of this country. And we have an interest, we have a stake in it. But Mr. Speaker, again, the article that Honorable Dwale actually read, Article 189, allows the county government and national government to liaise and I just wanted to read that the government at each level and different governments at the county level shall cooperate in the performance of functions and exercise of powers, and for the purpose may set up joint committees and joint authorities. Is if you are creating a legislation to handle matters metropolitan, you need to ask yourself whether it is only Nairobi that is of concern to us. I think that is a question that we should not run away from. Many of us have gone to Mombasa. Mombasa also faces the same challenges as Nairobi does in terms of traffic management, in terms of services that we are creating this authority to handle. When you go to Eldoret, for example, Mr. Speaker, I don't even want to mention Kisumu and Nakuru, because at least it is easy to manage traffic in Kisumu, Nakuru. Those of us who have been in Eldoret, I think you'll agree with me that managing traffic in Eldoret sometimes becomes a nightmare. And many times, So, Mr. Speaker, I think the fundamental question that we are asking is whether we will be coming up with pieces of legislation for each and every metropolitan area in this country, or it would have been more decent if, and saving our time, if we looked at all the areas that we could classify as metropolitan areas, so that we have one piece of legislation. Because, again, having many pieces of legislation becomes very difficult, even when you want to refer. So, Mr. Speaker, that is a question that needs to be addressed. The other question that probably needs to be addressed is really about understanding this bill critically. Because I've seen in the creation of the council, there is a cabinet secretary responsible for transport. There is the other one responsible for treasury. And then we have governor of Nairobi, governor of Kiambu, governor of Machakos, governor of Kajiado, governor of Murang'a. First of all, the way I look at it, having these governors to form a body to manage anything is, to me, a waste of time. Mr. Speaker, knowing the governors and their time and the way they think and their orientation, I wonder whether they will make any difference in terms of correcting the problems that we have in this city. That is one. Number two, I am asking myself why it is important to bring the governor of Murang'a to this council. Because I'm trying to look at the boundaries and how the counties are connected to Nairobi. Looking at Kajiado, I see it is connected to Nairobi. Machakos is connected to Nairobi. Kiambu is connected to Nairobi. I'm yet to see, maybe my geography is very poor. Someone needs to cite to me how Murang'a is connected to Nairobi. Or it is connected through association, maybe through Kiambu. But in that case then, Narok is also connected to Nairobi in a way. Why you bring Murang'a and you don't bring Narok, for example, I don't understand. Someone maybe needs to explain to me. Or someone just sat somewhere and decided for us which areas they would imagine have more interest and more stake. I know originally quite a number of people I would call immigrants, Mr. Speaker, came and settled in Nairobi. And I know there's quite a large number of population in Nairobi, people who actually their original homeland is in Murang'a, but that does not really qualify it, because that is a very debatable point, because we need census. We need to carry out census, Mr. Speaker, to really determine which counties really need to fall here. So, Mr. Speaker, that is a fundamental question that needs to be addressed going forward. Mr. Speaker, the other fear that I think many of us have is that is this bill an attempt to create the ministry that used to be headed by the late Honorable Mutula Kilonzo, the Nairobi Metropolitan Ministry. Mr. Speaker, we are wondering whether this could be an attempt to create that ministry through the back door and give it some responsibility. But fundamentally, and now I'm speaking to Nairobi voters, and I'm not really discampaigning anyone, I think this bill is an indictment that Nairobi voters have not really been able to hold their leaders to account, especially the governors. This is a complete failure of county government of Nairobi. We created the county government of Nairobi to manage some of the things that I see here. But, Mr. Speaker, we cannot give a full government with the largest budget in this country, called the county of Nairobi. They're probably one of the very few cities in this country which have administrative unit. I mean, so many have argued that Nairobi should have not been a county, but we made it a county with a governor. But we have been disappointed, and it is not just about the current government. It is from the government which came into office from 2013. Total failure. Right now we have another government, total failure. Now we think we can cure it by creating another body, which in my view may not even cure it. So we will end up being frustrated. The voters of Nairobi need to be very, how do I call it? The voters of Nairobi. No, by the way, if I campaign for anybody, so be it. Because if someone else can provide these services, it is better. Now we are spending so much time, Mr. Speaker, debating a bill to manage traffic in Nairobi, transport in Nairobi, to set fares. I mean, these are things that the county government of Nairobi, through the executive and the legislature of that assembly, of that county government, should have been the ones handling this. When we take up this responsibility and give it to another authority, creating a board, creating a council with all the expenses, Mr. Speaker, for this council to be able, even to perform this responsibility of developing a policy, of setting goals and objectives and priorities for the area, Mr. Speaker, to determine the financial contribution, approve the master plan and strategic plan. This is going to be a fully fledged office with budget. A lot of huge budgetary allocation is going to go into this. Paying other civil servants, public servants. We are going to create a board. This board is going to have principal secretaries. Yeah? It's going to have some executive members from the counties, from the 5 counties. You see, now we are going to take people from their counties to come and sit somewhere in Nairobi, to be managing Nairobi. People who are supposed to, the CEC who is supposed to manage issues of transport in Murang'a, will now be sitting in Nairobi a lot of times to discuss Nairobi issues. Mr. Speaker, I think let us call a spade a spade. If there is a problem with the Nairobi county government and management and provision of services, let the voters of Nairobi come out and elect people who can deliver services. It is wrong for the people of Nairobi to be voting because someone is very generous, philanthropic, giving unga. You know, this is where Kenyans go wrong. The fact that I'm generous does not make me a good manager. The fact that I'm not rich will never make me a good governor. I think the people of Kenya need to ask themselves, if you are electing a governor, you are electing someone who is going to head a unit which is supposed to deliver services to your area. You don't give us problems, then you want us to solve that problem. For me, Mr. Speaker, I think this bill, first, it should be taken back. Let it be withdrawn or whatever it is going to be done with, and let us have the county government of Nairobi, first of all, prove that they cannot deliver services. Then we can make a decision as a country whether we need this 47th county. If we don't need it, let us say we don't need it. Rather than, instead of creating through the back door another body to discharge duties which this body should discharge. Now, in the event now there is a failure, like there has been a failure in this country, you can see this city. You could see the floods, how we can't move when it rains, there are blockages. Now there will be shifting of people will be blaming each other, shifting of blames. This authority will be saying, that one is for the county government. They are the ones who are supposed to do drainages. We are not supposed to do drainage. The county government says, no, 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 you are supposed to manage the traffic. You have not managed the... So who is going to be responsible to the people of Kenya? Let us have one line of authority. If it is county government of Nairobi, we leave it there. If it is not, we should make a conscious decision as a country, do away with this county government, make it a national government function. Everybody should know that Kenya has only 46 counties. Nairobi is not a county. It is a national government area to manage, so that we know who to blame. But, Mr. Speaker, if you ask me, and I know many of my colleagues who have looked at this bill really is an admission of failure, but cleverly looking for a way of trying to manage it. I want to disagree with my friend here, TJ. This is not something that you should even ask that you should be involved in. As members of parliament, we are actually oversighting, legislating, and representing our people. You can't be involved again in the management of traffic in Nairobi. Surely, I would not accept to be involved in the management of traffic, setting fares. Then now, if the fares are set that my constituents cannot pay, who
is that Urban Areas Act is implemented to the letter. You know where they are. I think they should now stop the war of turf. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. because as Honorable Kajwang pointed out, there is obviously good need to have a correlation between the County Government Act, Cities and Urban Areas Act, and this proposed bill, should it become law, so as to see which of the functions which are in the Cities and Urban Areas Act will be ceded to this body or authority. Before I give the next speaker, allow me to recognize the presence in the public gallery of students from Mendiros Secondary School, Bahati constituency, Nakuru County. They too are welcome to observe proceedings. Member for Kangema.
Shukran. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the bill. The intention of the whole bill is fairly apparent. When one looks at Article 189, Sub-Article 2, it's unfortunate that my learned and friend TJ was unable to participate in public participation. I sympathize because the Chief Justice perhaps was too engaged in some demonstrations, and then the leader of business, the leader of minority, was also notable, perhaps, because he was more caring for people's assemblies, and perhaps did not see the wisdom of this bill. Mr. Speaker, the bill, I'm saying the reason why perhaps you missed public participation. Mr. Speaker, the whole intention of the bill is to harmonize public facilities like transport. If today, Mr. Speaker, you look at London, this is one of the most efficient, provides one of the most efficient type of transport. And if you look at the zoning of London, it goes to more than 150 kilometers away from the central business. It covers several of what you may call counties now, several shires around London. And for example, if you are to go to Rams today, you cannot do it it is not economic if you do for a small unit. So when you do Muranga, you do Kiambu, you do Kajiado, you do Machakos, then it becomes economically viable. If you only do it for Kasarani, is it? Kisirani. If you do it for Kisirani, and I'm not imputing any motive on my learned and friend Mheshimiwa Kajwang, but if you did it for Nairobi or Eastlands or Westlands, it is going to fail. So it is worthwhile, it is economic when it is larger population. Mr. Speaker, the animal called public participation now, we are lucky now there is a law. There is a law on public participation. And even if a member of parliament like Kigano, for example, I did not myself publicly participate in the making of this bill. But participation is the way you look at it. To me, it is objective when my governor, when my MCAs are consulted and when they participate. I have participated. It is a question of whether it is subjective or objective. So long as some willing participants and some stakeholders are consulted. So, Mr. Speaker, I am, with a lot of respect, saying this bill is overdue. It points to the purpose for which each one of us was elected to this House. For the public good, it is one of the best bills. It operationalizes 189 at 189 sub-article 2. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Kiminini.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to oppose this bill. Mr. Speaker, this bill to me is unconstitutional because looking at the functions, Mr. Speaker, actually it is the function of the county, particularly when it comes to the issues of transport, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, rumors has it that this is an authority to be created and to be given to Polycarp Igathe as a CEO, Mr. Speaker. This will be undermining Governor Songo, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
Honorable Amalo, I think sometimes, as honorable members, I think we also owe it to ourselves not to bring matters which are irrelevant, because you want to bring names of people who cannot defend themselves on the floor. If we asked you to table the evidence about what you have just alleged, will you do it?
I said rumors has it, Mr. Speaker.
No, we are not. You are an honorable member. You are not supposed to rely on rumors.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm guided. Mr. Speaker, when you look at this bill, it is talking of 5 counties. We are talking of Kiambu, Kajiado, Murang'a, Machakos, and Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, in terms of significance, Nairobi County contributes 92%. The Kiambu, Kajiado, Murang'a, Machakos, they'll only contribute about 2%, Mr. Speaker. So the gist of the matter here, Mr. Speaker, as far as transport is concerned, is about Nairobi County. Mr. Speaker, I've gone through the memoranda. I was very interested to see the submissions from Nairobi County, Mr. Speaker. I've not seen anything. Because Nairobi County, as far as this bill is concerned, it is actually very, very critical, very significant. The others of Murang'a, Machakos, Kajiado, they are totally insignificant, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the greatest problems we've had in this city, we've had issues of floods, issues of traffic jams, issues of potholes, Mr. Speaker. Now, the moment we get this authority, Mr. Speaker, this country, we've suffered, people have complained about issues of wage bill, Mr. Speaker. 50 kilometers, 60 kilometers, you've reached Makueni, Mr. Speaker, because we talk about the techno whatever, the one after the techno city. It is in Makueni. And, yeah, exactly, the Hola. So when you talk about that, Mr. Speaker, when you took that radius, I don't know what was the basis of coming up with these other metropolises. For instance, when you talk about the Murang'a, Mr. Speaker, Murang'a is about how many kilometers from here? It's about after Thika. So when you use the same radius, it actually qualifies for even Makueni and even Narok to be part and parcel of this Nairobi metropolitan. Mr. Speaker, as Kenyans, this is a capital city that handles everybody, even us who have come from the villages. Those of us who have come the parts of Rift Valley, the parts of Western, Mr. Speaker, we have a say in this city because the GDP of Nairobi contributes almost about 60% of the entire GDP of this country. And it's indeed very, very important that also when it comes to issues of public participation, they should have even invited other stakeholders, the civil society that handles the matters of transport, Mr. Speaker. So it is indeed important, Mr. Speaker, it's my humble request, as we move on, we try to expedite that bill of mine on public participation. It will solve most of these problems, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I continue contributing, I want to express my displeasure, Mr. Speaker, of the harassment, the threats, and the torture of my party leader, Senator Moses Wetangula, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the Bible, the stone that was rejected became the cornerstone.
Irrelevant. Please, you are dealing with the bill.
Mr. Speaker, the hour that is coming, the 0 hour, we'll talk more about that. And I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that 0 hour, so that we can also talk about matters of importance of this country. We are entitled to our own expression, Mr. Speaker, because the torture and all that, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, it must be inclusive as we move forward. Mr. Speaker, when Baba said left, we go left. When he says we go right, Mr. Speaker. That was not a problem, Mr. Speaker. And we are here to move forward as a team. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, I can see Honorable Kajwang says. Mr. Speaker, back on the bill. As we move on, Mr. Speaker, the issue of implementation. The issue of implementation, Mr. Speaker, of this bill, it is going to be a challenge. Mr. Speaker, protect me from Honorable Duale. He's saying I'm going to be removed. Mr. Speaker, there's freedom of expression. Mr. Speaker, as we move on, the challenge is, as we move on, how are we going to implement this bill, Mr. Speaker? The County Government Act, Mr. Speaker, with this bill, you can see it's going to be at the loggerheads. The Traffic Act. So it is important when it comes to implementation of this, for purposes of harmonization, Mr. Speaker, we should be able to do some amendments so that we can have harmonization, and when it comes into implementation, it can be easy, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we still support the dialogue as we move on. The Agenda 4 we support, but we are not part of government, Mr. Speaker. We are here to provide oversight. I remain this side, Mr. Speaker, as we oppose this, where it is right to oppose, and when it's something, an idea for public good, Mr. Speaker, we'll stand on this floor and we are going to support this. But for this bill, Mr. Speaker, we are going to oppose. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I oppose.
Honourable members, let's just remain relevant to the bill. But so that members, we don't have to spend a lot of time raising some of the issues. Let me just issue this communication so that we can clear the air on this. This communication relates to the alleged sub judice status and unconstitutionality of the Nairobi Metropolitan Area Transport Authority Bill, National Assembly Bill number 441 of 2017. Honourable members, you may recall that on Thursday, 15th March 2018, the member for Mathare constituency, the Honourable Anthony Tom Oluoch, rose on a point of order and invited the Speaker to declare the Nairobi Metropolitan Area Transport Authority Bill, National Assembly Bill number 41 of 2017, inadmissible for consideration by the House on grounds of unconstitutionality and application of Standing Order number 89 relating to matters sub judice. In his submissions, the member referred to Articles 187 and 189 of the Constitution, the Intergovernmental Relations Act of 2012, and Standing Orders 83, subsection 3, 89, subsection 4, 117, paragraph C, and 118. The member also questioned the Memorandum of Understanding signed between the national government and the 5 county governments towards the establishment of the Nairobi Metropolitan Transport Authority, and then proceeded to lay before the House a letter addressed to the Speaker of the National Assembly in connection with his claims. He also laid an annexure containing, among other items, a copy of a High Court petition number 94 of 2018, the parties being one, Wanjiru Gikonyo versus the Attorney General and others. Honourable members.
Maybe, Mr. Speaker, progressively, we'll need to relook at that, because when we have one harmonized body, we'll be able to harmonize all the other issues we are dealing with in terms of transportation. But, Mr. Speaker, going through also this bill, I have seen most of the representation is actually coming from the county governments. We have the CECs in charge of transportation. We also have the governors. But, Mr. Speaker, going through the bill again, you will notice that the authority is the coming together of the national government, especially in terms of the resources, and the county governments. And, Mr. Speaker, seated here as MPs, especially those who come from the counties that are in this bill, we are actually the patrons of Kura, especially Kura, and most of the national government entities in regards to building of roads and transportation. Maybe we'll need to include also members of parliament so that when we talk about harmonizing transportation, we actually do it wholesomely by incorporating every person that has an entity or that has a resource that goes to the roads and transportation sector in this country. But, Mr. Speaker, I think the issue of Sonko and Igathe, as raised by my friend Wamarwa, I think it is innuendo and misplaced, because we have seen a lot of investment from the national government in the city. We have so many roads being opened up. You go to Gong Road, it is being expanded. There is, of course, plans to expand the JKIA Rironi Road on a World Bank loan. All these loans and all these investments are being done by the national government. And therefore, we cannot just push all the responsibility and the liabilities of building the infrastructure to the national government and then deny them a say when it comes to the management of those modes. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill and this motion.
Member for Bondo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One thing that I think is clear is that the bill has some good intent, in as much as could be having weaknesses and challenges in terms of detail, but the intent is fine, in as much as what we are experiencing as a country. Just last week or two, in an interaction with our embassy in France, we were being informed that, well, Nairobi and Kenya, for that matter, was a preferred destination. Tanzania is overtaking us. And one of the things that are cited constantly is the issue of transport in Nairobi. And you can now see the extent at which we are missing, in terms of the economy, the amount of what we are missing if you compare that just because of transport alone. If you forget about the internal kind of losses that we have. The other thing that I think is not right when we treat Nairobi as local and we treat Nairobi as something that does not concern all of us. In my thinking and my idea is that Nairobi is national and Nairobi is international. And we have to look at it in that manner. We don't need to look at it in terms of now trying to compare Nairobi with Busia and every other place. I think if we go like that, we are going to be missing a very big point here. So my view, Mr. Speaker, is that the issue of transport in Nairobi, if this is the route, it needs to be fixed. I know there are many other ways of how one might want to look at it, but if this is the route, it is important that it's fixed. Now, if you look at it in details, one thing that this bill is bringing out is what we can even as well borrow, is setting certain things that I think counties are very slow at. Our constitution is very clear that counties, at their own horizontal arrangement, can get into partnerships and can work together, in as much as they can also work vertically. They have been very slow in doing this, to an extent that things that touch across them have not been handled in a manner that, for example, this bill is likely to bring out. That now Nairobi as a county can work very well or can work with the other sister counties. This is critical. Just in principle, if you put aside the issue of transport, the principle that counties can work across themselves is important. That counties can work vertically with the national government is important. So how are issues of details? And if you look at it in that manner, Mr. Speaker, is that when this works out, I want to believe that certain counties will now have the courage and will be able to cite that, no, something like this has happened. Even if we don't look at it in terms of us legislating. There are those of us who are very worried or concerned about, now, if we do this, does it mean we are going to be legislating for Kisumu, we are going to be legislating for Mombasa? I think there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong. We are here for purpose of legislation. So in my view, this is not really wrong. But we'll be creating a situation where, even if we don't legislate, Kisumu, Vihiga, and Homa Bay can on their own see what has happened in this arrangement and adapt, or see exactly how they can adjust to those kind of challenges. So in my view, it is very important, just for example, in terms of the principle. Then the other thing is the whole issue of we discussed here the other day when we were discussing the whole issue of Kenyatta Hospital. And we were seeing how the counties around Kenyatta Hospital are impacting on Kenyatta Hospital as a national referral facility. We were seeing that the biggest problem that Kenyatta has is a problem of Nairobi County, it's a problem of Kiambu County, it's a problem of Kajiado, and it's a problem of all these other counties that are around here. If Kenyatta Referral Hospital was somewhere in Busia, then these counties that we are talking about might not be really the issues. So when we are talking about Nairobi, Nairobi will definitely, and as at now, must involve Kiambu. Nairobi must involve Machakos. Nairobi must involve Kajiado. In all fairness, Nairobi must involve these counties that are around here. If you look at even the amount of movement of both human and traffic, I want to believe that a big percentage of it is now from without Nairobi. It's from outside Nairobi. And even if you look at in terms of the residents, those who call the residents of Nairobi, they are recipients of massive amount of commodities and things, including even vegetables. These are basically consumers. But the movement, what supports Nairobi really comes from outside. And a lot of it comes from Murang'a, a lot of it comes from Nakuru, a lot of it comes from all these kind of counties that we are talking about. So when we're talking about Nairobi, it's important that we look at Nairobi plus the counties that are around it. Now, coming back to transport as a specific, the biggest problem that we have in Nairobi now is the whole issue of traffic snarl-ups and the amount of wastage that goes in terms of traffic. So for Nairobi, if you go to many other counties, you go to many other cities, immediately past Westlands, you are in another county. And for you, again, we cannot prescribe everything in a legislation like this. There are many other things that need to be looked at. There are all those fears in terms of how do we look at the issue of resources. In itself, this authority can generate resources. There might only be a problem now in terms of resource sharing. We'll be generating resources on transport as a sector or a subsector for all the 6 or so counties. Then how do you share a portion to Murang'a? How do you share a portion to Kajiado, and how do you share this kind of thing? I think these are the next thing that needs to be looked at as we are looking at this kind of a legislation. But in my view, it is very necessary, in as much as it requires some of the details to be checked up again, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Now let's have, is it Babayao or Babaya from Kilifi? You have already spoken. It's Babaya, Kilifi North. Then what is the car doing here? That is Baba. Yeah, okay. So, no, I've not given you. Then I'm going to give Ochieng Award. Nowadays, it's very difficult for us to differentiate who sits where, you know, after the silver handshake. We seem to be having a problem with I've given you Honorable Achieng Award, but I can, next to you there is something working there.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Having read that bill and of course the discussions that have gone on, I would want to rise to oppose this bill. The bill sounds good, and it appears like the creation of this authority may solve the transport problem in Nairobi. But I don't think this is really necessary, because in Kenya, I think we have quite a number of authorities. The other day, we saw the National Transport Authority, which was actually created with an aim to try and manage our roads and bring down the level of accidents that we have on Kenyan roads. And I think every one of us would agree that the situation has not been better, and we saw its disbandment the other day, or it was the commission. Now, the real issue here, according to me, is that we are talking about the concept of transport. And picking up from one of my colleagues who spoke earlier, emphasizing the fact that in this bill we see a cure for the traffic snarl-ups in Nairobi. I rise to point out that if only leaders, including this House, would think robustly about Nairobi in particular as the city where we have most of the things that we don't have elsewhere in the country. I think the real cure for Nairobi's traffic is not in the creation really of that authority, but it is in a robust thinking of trying to see how can we run a 24-hour economy in Nairobi. How will this help? This will make sure that there is a continuous flow of people out and in of Nairobi, so that everybody doesn't have to rush to Nairobi town and city in the morning. and have to evacuate again in the evening. I'm thinking along this line because I know in the history, at some stage, there had been a thought of this nature, which was then fronted by Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka when he was talking about the concept of the 24-hour running economy. This kind of thing has helped other cities, but in Nairobi, we insist on all workers reporting to work in the morning around 7, 8, and by 5, everybody is leaving. And this is actually what causes the snarl-ups. So I think if we have to think and really help Nairobi for a long term, it is not the authority per se. It may be a question of seeing how do we manage the inflow and the outflow of people with vehicles and other means, lorries and everything, into and out of Nairobi. Apart from that, sometimes when you look at the concept of the transport and the traffic snarl-ups in Nairobi, I still want to maintain and insist that the issue is sometimes sheer indiscipline, because we have seen even sometimes leaders have played politics with the concept of transportation in Nairobi. There was a time that there were designated areas of Nairobi where matatus would go and where matatus would not go. And at some stage, this thing was again reverted. And we have seen all sorts of vehicles flowing into Nairobi all the time, all the day. And this is what is causing the problem. So in my thinking, I want to suggest that an issue like this one, which is not only a Nairobi concern, but the national concern, as has been noted correctly by former speakers ahead of me, that Nairobi receives vehicles from all over the country. If we can insist on maintaining discipline on the roads, regardless of who is elected where, I think we can manage the transportation problem in Nairobi area without this authority. When we think about the county government, it is also not good to dismiss the fact that the said governments are also supposed to be part of the management of what is happening in the entire county. So when we are saying we have a whole wing led by a CEC at the county government level, and we are also creating another authority running parallel to that, we will see a scenario of conflict of interest. And most of the time, what is happening, like somebody was giving the example of the roads, you find that you go to a county, an MP is claiming, I'm the one who is responsible for the making of this road. The county government is saying the same. The MCA is saying the same. I'm thinking that it is high time that Kenyans also, we became serious and charged the relevant authorities with the responsibility that they deserve. I would not be surprised if after creating that authority, there is this excuses and backpassing, as has been the case of every other person. The authority will be saying, oh, that is now a problem created by the county government. And the county government that is a problem of the authority. And with this, I think we need to relook at the real benefits of having these transport departments within the county government. And in my opinion, I think it is high time the county government of Nairobi was tasked, even at their level of their assembly discussion, to be the ones to discuss this thing that we are discussing here. Exactly how can we manage the transport problem in Nairobi? Because they receive money from the national government to make sure that the transport within the county is well coordinated and well managed. So, Bwana Speaker, I think what we are discussing here sounds good and really good, but if you look at it critically, to me, it is another way of just creating other bodies and positions that would create conflict further and not really solving the problem in question. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I oppose the bill. Thank you.
Okay, now you say I go to this other side, I'll give top.
It's okay, my brother. Welcome,
well, I can give you from where you are, Honorable Sanko.
Let me say that I do support this bill because we waste a lot of time we are affected in terms of finance, economically, because of the jams that are in our city. And Honorable Speaker, there are people alluding that this bill is politically motivated. But Honorable Speaker, I can say without fear of contradiction that this bill is a bill that have been developed from 2014 until this time because of the problem that is affecting our city. Honorable Speaker, we really do need to have a smooth flow of vehicles from one point to another in this city, because economically it is affecting us, because we burn a lot of fuel in our roads. Secondly, tourists and investors are getting scared of this jam that is in our city. Some of them are now preferring investing in the neighboring countries like Tanzania, Uganda. Some of the tourists are visiting countries that are neighboring to us because of the easier movement of persons from one point to another one. If today we get a tourist from Europe, they will spend around 8 hours to travel from England to Kenya. And their intention is to visit our game reserve like Masai Mara. Now, from the airport to Masai Mara, it will take them not less than 10 hours. Now, you can imagine somebody traveling all the way from Europe, from England, spending 8 hours on air, only to come and spend 10 to 12 hours from our airport to Masai Mara Game Reserve or to Amboseli because of the jam that are in our roads. Honorable Speaker, we really need to deal with this problem once and for all, for us to benefit economically. And when we say that it is a metropolis, it includes Kajiado, it includes Machakos, Kiambu, Murang'a. It only means that there is no way you can cure the problem of traffic snarl in our city without also creating another problem in the neighboring counties. Because all these vehicles that are coming out of our roads in Nairobi, the roads from Nairobi, if then we expand the road network in Nairobi and shrink them or leave them the way they are in the neighboring counties in which the spill of the vehicles goes to, then you will find that we will create more problem in the neighboring counties. So, Honorable Speaker, I do support this bill, and I want to urge those who are opposing this bill to reread this bill and try to understand. And also, if you are not there when there was public participation, you should consult with other members, because I'm 100% sure that there is no politics in this bill. It's a problem that needs to be solved by all Kenyans, and members of parliament should lead in solving this problem. The only problem we have, Honorable Speaker, is this issue of having commissions will spend a lot of money in what we call maintenance or administrative fee when we have. An honorable member from Kiaru had given us an example of Singapore, which have only one land transport commission that deal with the railway and deal with all transport that are on land. But here in Kenya, if you talk of land transport, oh my God, you'll be able to fill a whole full scope mentioning all those commissions. Because the commission on road alone are almost 5, 6, and now we are creating another one. So if we can merge all these ones so that the expense we incur in administrative fee of all these commissions who need allowances, remuneration, salaries can be reduced so that it will actually, the money goes directly to the intended purpose of expanding our road. So, Honorable Speaker, I do support this bill.
Very well. Let's have a member for Larry and the member for Kwanza get ready.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this motion. On the onset, I am wondering why people are looking at this authority as only a road network authority.
And honorable members, especially from the left of the Speaker, please let me confirm those who have not spoken, because I can see there are cards which have stuck here. Like, for example, the one for Babaya and even Ochieng Awor, whom has just spoken. The card seems to be stuck here. I do not know whether Nyikal, you have spoken. Okay, then we will find time. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I'm looking at this bill, at this authority, I'm looking at an authority that is responsible for planning our transport system. I'm looking at an authority which will also plan about the railway system within the Nairobi metropolis. I'm looking at Nairobi being a sitting room of all the residents. I'm seeing people thinking like Kisumu should be given the same, while we are all in Nairobi even as parliamentarians. I'm looking at Machakos is a bedroom, Kiambu is a bedroom, Kajiado is a bedroom. Nairobi population during the day is about 6 million. At night is about 3 million. So 50% of the people living in Nairobi are going to the outside of Nairobi at night. And we need an authority that is devoid of politics. You remember in the last regime of Nairobi governor, all matatu started coming up to Moi Avenue because of politics, because the governor wants to feel the hero and he wants to control the industry of matatu. And that's why I feel we need this authority, which will be devoid of politics, and it will plan Nairobi in an organized way. I'm looking at goods coming to Mombasa. We need a system whereby this authority will be responsible. Where are we offloading these goods? Coming in the railway, coming on road, how are we offloading these goods to Nairobi? Because Nairobi is the biggest consumer in this country. We are over 60% contributors of the GDP on Nairobi. So the system should be governed by an authority that is not everyday politicking. I'm looking at planning, budget. When we have an authority, the government is able to allocate a big budget to build the road network in the whole of this city of Nairobi. When we look at people saying that Nairobi itself as a city, I've had another member of parliament saying the 17 of them in Nairobi. The Eastern Bypass, 70% of it is out of Nairobi. The Southern Bypass, 70% is out of Nairobi. And then we have the other Upper Eastern Bypass that is coming from Lolongo to Kilimambogo, 100% of it is out of Nairobi city. But its main purpose is to reduce traffic in Nairobi and to make Nairobi economy grow and move faster. So I highly support this authority to be created, and it should be given a huge budget, because all of us, even parliamentarians, we are wasting time on these small roads, others coming from the river, others coming from Kiambu, like me coming from Lari. Again, when we look at the presidents, the big four, we have affordable housing. Surely, these houses will not be built in the center of this city. These houses are being built out of this city, but easier to access the city. Others will be built in Konza, others will be built in Makueni, others will be built in Limuru and Lari. How do those people get to Nairobi? How will those governors coordinate so that we can have a good network for Nairobi? Will each governor give his budget for the road network in Nairobi? I highly support the creation of this authority because it will create ease in this city of Nairobi. I support. Thank you.
No, not member for Seme, honorable member for Kwanza. Then we will now come to Seme later.
Mr. Speaker, I want to differ with my side and support this motion, this bill. And I do this, Mr. Speaker, with the background, because I've been in Nairobi here for quite some time. First of all, when I came to Nairobi, sometimes I think I took a train in Kisumu, came all the way to Nairobi. My sister was staying at Makongeni. If you have to go to Ngara, those things, if you have to go to Westlands or whatever. So, Mr. Speaker, I've looked at the situation here. And most of members here, you have traveled. and most of them are traveled very recent as last week. You look at other cities, and we appreciate that Nairobi is chaotic. The other day I was coming for a meeting here. I stay in Westlands, a place called Kitusuru. It took me 2 hours, and I was late for the meeting. So, if you are here and opposing this, and you're a member of parliament, I'm sorry about it. Because you then don't understand the history of this city. This city is an international city, as somebody has mentioned, and you've got to agree. It's the only city on the earth that you have the tourists. You go to Langata Animal Orphanage, the tourists go there. You have, of course, the National Museum just next door here. People come all the way to see what is at a National Museum. And therefore, this is actually a city. It's not just another town like Eldoret, like Italy, where I come from. They'll grow over time, maybe in future in prosperity. And we are saying, and therefore I urge my members to support this motion. And somebody says, okay, the authority, there are too many authorities. Yes, but we want to bring order to a city. This is no longer just a town. It's no longer just Nairobi city. It's an international city. Recently, we even passed a motion to say Nairobi city is actually international monetary center for the region. What are we talking about? When we start opposing this for the sake of it, then you don't understand the history of this country. Secondly, I think the objective of this motion, of this bill, which I've seen, is just to have integrated system where if you know, and it's just a common knowledge. I wish my friend Ichungo was here. People who work in this city don't stay in this city. And I can tell you, if you are coming, you're commuting from Moranga or Kajiado or Machakos, and I'm telling you, about 60 million people come this city to do work, to do some business. And what happens? Only 4 million sleep here. The rest of the people come from outside the city. And so getting into work, I can tell you, for free. My grandson in Kitusuru wakes up at what time to go to school in Westlands? The answer is yours. He wakes up at 5 o'clock to get to Westlands, and I stay in Westlands. So ultimately, all we are saying, and I'm saying straight, is that let's put everything else aside, support this bill, so that can have order, a systematic system where, for example, somebody coming from Moranga, somebody coming from Kajiado, somebody coming from Machakos, somebody coming from wherever, Kiambu, he comes and gets here on time because the system works. But as it is today, children are even suffering. I don't even know. I pity them because if a child is not in a boarding school and he has to go some 2 kilometers away, it must be taken. I can tell you, the time the child walks up or is woken up to go to the school, the guess is yours, is as good as mine. So I think let's decongest the city. It doesn't matter whether it's Songo who is there. It doesn't matter whether it's me, Ferdinand Wanyonyi, who is the governor of this city. But it's ultimately the duty of us as legislators to be able to look at it, and we look at it in prosperity. I was in Rome. In Rome, I think 2 or 3 years ago. You see these buses come, and there's no congestion at all. Yeah? Because the system works. And therefore, I think, Mr. Speaker, let's decongest this city. This is a capital city, and somebody said, why do you do it? Why can't we do it also in Mombasa? I agree with you, but let's start somewhere. Let's have, for example, Nairobi. If the system works, it will be copied elsewhere. Let's start here as a pilot, and I'm sure if Nairobi works, then the other cities will work. Kisumu will work, Nakuru will work, Mombasa, which is the second largest city, will also work. But then we can copy from what? So I want to support this bill because I think there's a lot of sense in it. And if we can go to that, it doesn't now matter whether the governors are going to be the authority or members of parliament. And I want also to correct the situation. Members, You don't have to be there as a member of parliament. You can also have your presence there, like you have in the CDF, through your presentation. Somebody can represent you. And therefore, I think all we are saying is that we support this bill for prosperity. We support this bill because you know very well, Nairobi contributes, it's such an important city. It contributes 60% of the GPT of this country. So we want to wash it away? It doesn't make sense. Nairobi contributes 60% of our GPT, which you and I actually enjoy. So therefore, it's need for us to protect that source of income for our country. So I want to say, I think given the importance of this, and given that most of people working here coming from outside, let's have a system that works. And I think this bill will cure that problem here. Those of you who didn't come here, who came just the other year, know that this place is chaotic compared to 20 years ago. And without us fixing it as legislators, then of course we are running amok. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity and saying that even once this is through, we'll be able to copy from Nairobi and have other authorities elsewhere. I support the bill. Thank you so much.
Okay, let's have Honorable Nyikal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute to this bill. Mr. Speaker, this is a well-intentioned bill, and unfortunately it is coming out and being riddled with controversy that we often have. And I think those should have been seen earlier, even before the bill came to us. I know the Speaker had actually ruled on the issue of constitutionality, on the issue of sub judice. But be that as it may, Mr. Speaker, there are areas that really should have been looked at. How this bill will relate to the other acts that are already in place. The Cities and Urban Areas Act, the County Government Act, the Intergovernmental Relations Act, the Traffic Act. I've looked at the bill, and Mr. Speaker, those has been not taken into consideration, and I think those need to be looked at. Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate that this bill, as it comes in, has been already in controversy about employment, but that again has been ruled by the Speaker that what is relating to a legal notice that gave authority for that employment. So I think that are things we should look at. The issue of other urban areas, I think that's something that can be taken care of in the future. Mr. Speaker, I said this is a well-intentioned bill. And Mr. Speaker, the object of the bill to provide integrated, sustainable public transport within Nairobi and the metropolises. Nobody can argue with that. Mr. Speaker, the people of Nairobi have been long suffering. In the evening, Mr. Speaker, from 5 p.m. to nearly 10 in the night, people are stuck in this town. They cannot move to their homes. So I think that's something we should look at. Children wake up, as been said, at 3 in the morning. I think that's something that we owe to the children we should look at. And we should learn that when schools are closed, actually there is relatively little traffic. It means the people who are suffering most when we do not look at our traffic are the children. So that's an important thing to look at. But Mr. Speaker, as Honorable Wanyonyi has said, this city had the best transport. Will come, and it will come at that time. And all these routes we are seeing, number 7, number 8, number 13, they were done in such a way that they were looking at the city as a whole. 7 from Kenyatta to Jericho, 22 from Jerusalem to Kabete. And you didn't have to get out in town if you are traveling. And tickets were bought in advance. And it was integrated with the East African Road Services. So you came from Mobay with a ticket, and that allowed you to use the bus system. And even in Mombasa, there was the bus services that the ticket still applied here. That integration, obviously, we need it. And Mr. Speaker, this was killed with the matatus when the TLB allowed matatus to operate. We cannot run a city of the magnitude of Nairobi with matatus that are carrying 10, 15 people at a go. It just doesn't work. And then run on purely commercial basis without interest of the residents at heart, and no regulation to control that. I think for that reason, I think this bill is good, and I've said the reservations that I have about it. And Mr. Speaker, it's not that there is no money to do this job. It has been an issue of lack of political will. All those people that are staying in town late into the night, each and every one of them standing in the street corner waiting for a matatu actually has about 100 shillings in his or her pocket. That is the money we need to run this system. So if this can do that, Mr. Speaker, I think it's a good time. Mr. Speaker, the bill itself, I don't have much problem with. If you look at clause 2, it gives definitions that gives hope. It looks at the metropolitan area. And if we look at metropolis, I think we may have to go further so that the metropolis is not defined just for transport, but we must look at other areas that will need the metropolis. I have no problem with Nairobi City, Kiambu, Machakos, Kajiado, Murang'a. I even wondered why we cannot include Naivasha so that Nakuru will be part of it. Because the truth is, people come from those places daily, and they, because they are here, that is why we have the congestion. So you look at that definition, I like it. Bus, rapid bus transport system, which will have dedicated lanes. Long overdue. We think we had a motion here that was saying we should have dedicated lanes for buses and for other road users. Integrated public transport system, so that between different transport systems, the ticketing, as I've said, the use, you don't have to pay when you pay at this point, you go and pay at this. When are Nairobi people going to plan their life and say, if I buy a ticket for a month, I will move? I know it has been tried, but it hasn't worked well because we don't have an integrated system that is in place by law. And that is what I think we need. Mass rapid transport is explained here, and if it is as is indicated here, whether if you have underground transport, whether you have road transport, whether you have light rail, which I hope this thing will do, then you can move from one to the other with specific areas where you can plan your, park your car and move around. Mr. Speaker, if we just had even a circuit from Uhuru Park, all down the way to the old railways, down to Machakos bus stop, all the way to Ungara, and go round. And this is just going round and round. And something from Hurlingham, all the way to Kariako, and something from railways, all the way to university. Nobody would need to have a bus or a car in town. And these are the things we think these people will look up. So that integration is important. I have a problem with the definition of a bus. The definition of a bus here, which is saying anything not more than 7, not less than 7. I think that definition is still retained in Matatu. Somebody in their heart is still thinking this city should be run with this small vehicle. I think we should have a larger number, maybe 30. So that definition, I think we'll have to look at it. Clause 4 establishes the authority, and I think, although there's a constitutional problem, I think they're intending to, the 189(2) actually allows for joint authorities. So I think that's something that will be contained within the Constitution. I looked at it, and the representation, the membership is what I think we will have to look at in that authority. It has a wide-ranging function from policy to formulation of plan, implementation, formulation of standard. Now, the only thing I have, that same authority is also going to have a function of regulation. If it is going to implement, then it cannot have regulation at well, because there will be obviously a conflict of interest. And it has broad powers, the forming partnerships, purchasing of land. This council is purely government, And it looks like this council is going to oversight this authority. But if you look carefully at the functions of both the authority and the council, there is definitely going to be a conflict of interest, or not a conflict of interest, but there's going to be a tug of war between the council and the authority. And I think that is an area we should look at very carefully. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I do support this, but with the reservations as I've indicated. And I think the last one I would say, projects of this magnitude often are affected by corruption. And sometimes the good intention are marred by those who intend to benefit from them. Those are the people who are causing reservations.
Your time is over, so let's have a member for Barakwet West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like my colleagues, I arise to support this motion. Some of us who were in Nairobi, late 80s and early 90s, the transport system was very good. I remember the number of vehicles within the city center at that time were very few because there was no need even to drive. Because if you wanted to go to Ngong, because that's where I used to live, you can get a vehicle going through Giserian and a bus, KBS number 145, there was a number bus 111. So it was very easy to move around because the system that time was well maintained, well managed, until recently when we started encouraging these small passes that we call passes of 7-seater, and 14-seater, and 11-seater, the Nissans. Those are the ones that have caused chaos. To tell you, Mr. Speaker, there's the other day you sent us for a trip in Malaysia, and 1970s, Malaysia and Kenya were at par. They were the same level of development. But if you see what they've done for the last 50 years, that they've been independent is quite different from what we have done because they have underpasses, they have rail transport within the city. We took 25 minutes from the airport, which is 50 kilometers away from the city center from the airport to the city center. Here in Nairobi, the JKIA airport is about 16 kilometers, but on occasions, you would take almost 3-4 hours from JKIA to Nairobi city center because of the traffic jam that we have within Nairobi. We have actually lost so many resources. Many of investors who are willing to come to Nairobi, to come to Kenya and invest, have relocated to other countries. Some have gone to South Africa, somebody said Rwanda, even our neighbor Tanzania and Uganda, because they cannot manage the losses because of our transport system. In the past, we passed a bill here that we need to dedicate some lands for some special services like ambulances. We have actually lost lives because of traffic jam. We are unable to rescue people to the hospital. 40 years ago, we had the same power. It's because of this problem. We need to move quickly and enact the bill. We make it a law and we implement. We put enough resources. About corruption, we can deal with that. We have agencies that will ensure the levels of corruption are brought down. So, Mr. Speaker, I support and I urge my colleagues on the other side who are opposing to support so that at least we can move forward as a nation.
Member for Kilifi North.
It's Kilifi South, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I stand to support this motion. Indeed, Nairobi has become a city of much of shame, more especially when it rains. Most of us have had sometimes to use border borders if we have to catch flights to some destinations outside Nairobi. It's a challenge that is real. It's being seen in nearly all over the world. And I think time has come that this problem has to be fixed. But Mr. Speaker, I have some reservation on the name. The challenge that we are having in Nairobi is not unique. If you've been to Eldoret, these challenges are still there. When you get to a small town like Embu, it's equally a mess. I represent a very small town, Mtwapa, within Kilifi South. It's one of the fastest growing towns as we speak. But if you have to travel from Kilifi to catch a flight in Mombasa, you'll be very lucky if you'll make it within 2 hours. So what am I saying then? What I'm saying is this. The challenges that we are having within Nairobi has a genesis. And I strongly believe at one point, similar towns like Eldoret, Mombasa, Kitale, we are still going to get to the situation that where Nairobi is. I would therefore suggest that instead of having Nairobi Metropolitan City, Urban Authority, we get a name of an authority that is going to cater for all the cities that we have within Kenya, because at one point, these same towns are going to grow to the level of Nairobi City. Also, I think as much as devolution is a new concept, in my observation, most of the counties have not factored these challenges that are being faced by pedestrians within the cities. Otherwise, I think as much as we are suffering in Nairobi, some other counties would have come up with some sessional papers. They could have come up with concept papers that would lead to addressing some of these challenges that we are facing right now in Nairobi. Implying, therefore, in those counties, for as long as they are not witnessing the problems that are in Nairobi, at the moment, life is okay, life is going on. I therefore support this motion, but with that reservation that let the authority be take care of all the cities within Kenya so that at one point or another, should this challenge arise, they'll be prepared to cope with them. Thank you.
Honorable Wanyonyi, member for Westlands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance. Mr. Speaker, this is a very progressive bill. It's only that we need to fix a few loose ends here and there. There are a few weaknesses in the bill, but I'm sure that can be sorted. Mr. Speaker, a few years ago, when I was working at Nairobi City Council, we had a function somewhere in Barcelona, in Spain, about something called smart cities. Smart cities, Mr. Speaker, are cities that have capacity to solve their problems with the minimal interference of the lives of people. And there are many cities, Mr. Speaker, like Mumbai in India. A few years ago, it was a chaotic city. But right now, Mr. Speaker, they have fixed it. It's working perfect. It has got a transport system that is very progressive, and many things are working. I believe with this bill, if it is well-intentioned, Mr. Speaker, we can fix the problems in Nairobi. I can also attest, Mr. Speaker, I was a student in Nairobi in the 80s when Kenya bus was working. Mr. Speaker, you will take one Kenya bus from one end of Nairobi to the other end, and the time schedule was always, Mr. Speaker, adhered to. So I believe that what you are doing here, Mr. Speaker, this legislation can bring a lot of change in Nairobi and can modernize this city and make Nairobi functional. What is not working in this city, Mr. Speaker, is the public transport that is not properly organized. It's chaotic. It is the one that is encouraging people to invest heavily in private transport. Because if we had functional public transport, not many people will be interested in buying private cars. When you go to big, big cities, Mr. Speaker, you find people travel by public transport more than they travel by private means, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I believe that this bill, it will, when properly implemented, Mr. Speaker, it will create a lot of order in our city, and it will make living in Nairobi much better than it is now. Mr. Speaker, this recently when we were in Dar es Salaam for sports, I saw those those lanes for rapid vehicles, the public transport. This is an experimental thing that is working in Dar es Salaam. I'm sure it can still work here. We are just scared about what will happen, people will be displaced and all that kind of thing. But this has to be done. Sometimes you have to pay a price for you to get the right things to be done, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I believe that when we do this, we enact this legislation, and the authorities that have been assigned, the counties that have been assigned in this bill, Mr. Speaker, if they properly coordinate and make this thing function, Nairobi and the metropolis that have been mentioned, Mr. Speaker, within that radius, it will work. I remember the late Mutula Kilonzo, when he was the Minister for Metropolitan. He had come up with this idea, and he traveled across the areas he had defined that were covering the metropolis, Mr. Speaker. And it was looking real. But it reached somewhere, it just disappeared. I don't know what happened until we have come up with this. And I believe, let's not inject politics in this bill. Let us look at it critically and bring out the good in it so that we don't read everything. We don't read politics in everything that comes here. I'm sure some people are seeing it, that it is going to interfere with the county government of Nairobi, that the central government wants to take over the county government. I think that is in bad faith. I believe we as legislators, we are here to enact laws. And if we see a bad law, we can make it better. We can amend it. We can improve it and make it work for us. So let us not be scared about things like people who are on the street. We must always be the ones to deal with it head on. We don't have to start talking like we are not a part of this house.
Of what goes to other counties, 60%. And when you double that, then it is, you can see you get more CDF money. Even the governors in their places will get more allocation. So to me, Mr. Speaker, this is a bill that needs support of everybody. I'm very happy now because now we don't have that politics that was about to destroy our country. And I want to thank the two readers that they agreed that we work together, and we want this to be cemented. We want to move forward. This is what country want to. Kenyans now and members can attest to it. Nobody want to hear about election anymore. We have just come from election, and our people down there, they don't even want to hear that there is election coming up, because this issue of election is something that is almost killing. It was almost dividing this country. We are almost to go to bad way because of politics. So can those people who talk about 2022 and whatever, at least stop for now and less deferment. We have many such, Mr. Speaker, who are the engine appointed by the chief executive, the president and the deputy president. When we have issues on development, they should be the mouthpiece. When the president and the deputy president are twirling the counties. Let's remove the politicians in those meetings because they are talking politics all the time. And then once you talk politics from now up to 2022, then this is, we were in Malaysia the other day, Mr. Speaker. And in Malaysia, they are even going for election in May. Not in May, April. And you will not know whether there is election. Because to them, election come and go. But they have a country. And they have guided their democrats in a way that they will be, and they have even known who will be their leader in 20 years, in 5 years, in whatever. So there is no that animosity that we want our tribesmen to be this and that. They have put it in black and white. So even when you are there, you know our term will come at this time. I think we should also be able to move in that direction. we should maybe one time even decide to amend these constitutions again and factor in that those things that make us and divide this country. I was very happy to see the president shaking hands with Raila, and I pray that where there are two fathers died in disagreeing, maybe they can come together now and make this country to be one country. I'm the chairman of Cohesion. I was even, when I was given the position, I was wondering, where do I start with the animosity and the fight that was in the country? But I'm the happiest person, Mr. Speaker, because I'll be able to go to Nyanza. I'll go to any other part of this country because it has united all of us, and we will speak in one voice for the sake of this country. And with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg.
Let's have Honorable Were Ongondo, member for Kasipul.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to contribute to the motion with full support. As I've gone through the bill, it has very good intent. True, there's a problem in Nairobi in transport, which, if not managed well, it brings an economical setback. And we cannot decongest Nairobi without mentioning Kiambu, Kajiado, and Machakos. The only county which brought suspicion is Murang'a, because out of my knowledge, Murang'a is almost 70 kilometers away from Nairobi, of which, if you calculate, even Nakuru is 50 kilometers away. But the bill is good, because with the poor transport system, even if you have a sick person, there's no way you can reach the hospital very quickly. There's been problems, even as members of parliament, even traveling from morning to reach this house, you must leave maybe your house by 6. So almost 2 hours wasted in roads, which we could have done other activities. So the motion, the bill is good, and I really support. Thank you.
Let's have a member for Taveta.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipatia nafasi hii, nami pia kuunga wenzangu mkono ya kuwa tunahitaji halmashauri ya jiji la Nairobi kuweza kupata usafiri wa kitaifa. Ukweli ni kwamba jiji la Nairobi ni letu sisi sote, si la watu fulani, bali wa Kenya wote. Jiji la Nairobi ndio sura ya Kenya. Jiji la Nairobi ndio pahali ambapo pesa nyingi ambazo zinatumika nchini hapa zinapatikana. Vile vile, nikiwapeleka nyuma kidogo kihistoria, ukiangalia wakati wa Rais Moi, alijaribu kuweka usafiri kutumia mabasi ya Nyayo. Alikuja akaangalia sana, kwa kina sana, usafiri wa Mombasa, haswa ukiangalia barabara ya Dongo Kundu ambayo ilizungumziwa kwa muda mrefu, sasa hivi inajengwa. Vile vile barabara ya kutoka kwenye uwanja wa ndege inapanuliwa. Vile vile barabara ya kutoka upande wa Mariakani hadi Mazeras ambapo kulikuwa na tatizo kubwa inapanuliwa. Ukienda upande wa jiji la Kisumu, vile vile barabara zinapanuliwa. Je, tukubali kuwa Nairobi ikae hivi hivi tuwe na matatizo milele, ama Nairobi iangaliwe iwe ya kwanza kuangaliwa, alafu huko kwingine pia nako kufuatie? Ukienda miji mikuu yote, miaka iliyopita nikiwa waziri niliwahi kusafiri kwenda Beijing, China. Nikakuta wakati huo walikuwa wanajenga usafiri wa kitaifa. Nilivyoenda tena nikauliza, haya imekuwaje sasa hivi hakuna jam? Kaambiwa kuwa usafiri sasa wa kitaifa upo na watu wengi wanaacha magari nyumbani, wanasafiri na usafiri wa reli, na vile vile serikali ambayo inasimamia jiji la Beijing imeamua kuwa kuna siku ambazo magari fulani hayaruhusiwi mjini. Sasa ukifika pale unaona tofauti kubwa sana. Ukifika jiji la London kuna usafiri mzuri sana, na haswa serikali imewataka watu wasafiri na usafiri ule, lakini saa nyingine watu wengine wanapendelea kuendesha magari yao na kuja mjini. Wamepatiwa fine, wamepatiwa kulipa ridhia pesa nyingi wakiingia mjini bila sababu nzuri. Wanalipa karibu shilingi 1,000 pesa taslimu ukifananisha na pesa za Kenya. Na ukienda miji mingine mingi utaona kuwa kuna tofauti kubwa sana ili kupata usafiri wa kitaifa ambao unaweza. Kuna huu wasiwasi kuwa kazi ambazo ni za kaunti ya Nairobi zinachukuliwa na serikali kuu. Swali ni hili: je, wakiachiwa wataweza kutatua tatizo hili? Ukweli ni kwamba haiwezekani. Kwa hivyo serikali kuu ya kitaifa ni lazima ifanye kazi na serikali ya kaunti ili kuweza kutatua matatizo haya. Mheshimiwa Spika, Kenya yetu pale imefika sasa, ni lazima tubadilishe. Tusiweke siasa katika kila kitu. Tubadilishe mwenendo, tubadilishe kuwa kuna umuhimu wa vitu ambavyo, miradi ambayo inafanywa na serikali ambayo inafaidisha Wakenya wote iweze kufanyika. Nafikiria tulikuwa na wewe hapa mwaka wakati wa bunge la 9. Na wakati tukiwa hapa kulizungumziwa sana upanuaji wa kiwanja cha ndege cha Jomo Kenyatta, na ikaleta hisia mbaya na ikacheleweshwa mpaka sasa. Bei zilibadilika zikawa juu sana kwa sababu ya kucheleweshwa kufanya miradi ile. Ninawaomba wenzangu wote tujue kuwa jiji la Nairobi ni letu sote. Kila siku kuna pahali utaanzia, na nina imani kuwa mwanzo ni Nairobi ili kuweza ya kuwa na wizara ambayo inasimamia jiji la Nairobi. Sasa basi, kwa sababu wizara zimepunguzwa, haiwezekani kuwa na wizara ikisimama kivyake. Kuna umuhimu wa halmashauri hii iweze kusimamia masuala ya usafiri. Ndugu zangu, nawaomba nyote waheshimiwa wote tuunge mkono swala hili ili tuweze kuanzisha shughuli hii ya mradi huu ambao utaokoa hali ya usafiri, utaongeza hali ya uchumi, utawezesha wageni wanaokuja Kenya waweze kutaka kuja Kenya zaidi, ili aswa kuja kuwekezea hapa Kenya, watu wetu waweze kupata kazi. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika, naunga mkono.
Very well. Let's have Honorable Mohammed Sheikh, member for Wajir South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I support this very invaluable bill. I do support this bill for various reasons. For the major reason is that Nairobi is a very important city in this world. It's a very important city in Africa. It's a very important city in East Africa. Given that that is the case, it is also more important to understand that Nairobi is the capital city of Kenya. Given that that is the case, Nairobi hosts so many institutions, global institutions for that matter, and because of that, Nairobi is an important destination of many people around the world. And therefore, given that that is the value it adds to global, to the world, Nairobi becomes very important around the world. What I would like to mention quite importantly is that the cost of traffic jam in Nairobi is exorbitant. It's quite exorbitant in the sense that the amount of money that indirectly and directly that it costs the taxpayer is extremely high. But before I can dwell on Nairobi and its networks, it is important that we see at the global level what traffic jam really does. A study in the US indicates that traffic jam can cost as high a country, and that is it costs the US as much as $124 billion per year. Given that that is the situation, the United States decided to invest in the road networks, in infrastructures, and in looking at ways traffic jam is eased around the world. In the UK, another study in the UK indicates that it costs nearly £1,000 per capita per annum. And that is quite a huge amount of money for an individual. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, in 2030, an estimation is looked at the amount of traffic jam, the cost of traffic jam in the US could skyrocket to about $300 billion. Therefore, Nairobi is not exceptional from such kind of challenges. In Kenya, it costs the taxpayer nearly 58 million shillings per day. And it is also estimated that overall 38 billion shillings is lost due to traffic. And in Nairobi, it takes the highest share. Given that that is the situation, Mr. Speaker, Nairobi traffic is also choking. It is also choking. It's choking the society and indeed affecting the healthcare of the community that live around Nairobi. This bill will help streamline the Nairobi traffic challenges and ensure not only economic savings, but also the health and safety of our people. The clogged traffic road network, Mr. Speaker, deters investors. It deters growth. It deters the development of our society. And the challenge may double in the coming years, especially in 2030. It is also important to note that to achieve the Vision 2030 in terms of infrastructure and roads, this bill deserves supported. For our national growth, Mr. Speaker, we need to understand that our infrastructural network, especially roads, need cared for. It needs cared for, and therefore this bill will be one of the important elements that will ensure that that really happens. The Nairobi Metropolitan Area Transport Authority bill will enhance the work of the Nairobi authorities and will help them streamline the challenges and the issues that we face. Mr. Speaker, in this day and age, in the development-conscious societies, they always streamline the process and the plans that they make for their cities. Nairobi is an exceptional city. It is an important city. It is an important city globally. It is an important city to this country, and it's an important city to East Africa. And because of that, I do support this bill, and I urge my colleagues to support this bill. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Martin Owino, member for Ndiwa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We all want Nairobi to be the best in this region. And we also want this bill to be one of the corrective measures. But I want to contribute to this bill by saying that some areas need to be reviewed. For example, I think it was said here, the two authorities, especially the council and also the authority, how these people are going to work together, we need to review that. Also, it's known globally that you cannot fix traffic jam with hardware only. This bill should address how behaviors will be modified. For example, the truck routes, that has to be addressed. How the traffic laws, because right now even we are going through the same. People driving the way they want, and even when they're not supposed to. So that bit, which I call the software, must be addressed. Also, Madam Speaker, we need to look at the planning of our urban areas and town. That is one area where we are going wrong. Even the upcoming towns are going to face the same problem which Nairobi is facing right now. So if we don't have preventive measures to ensure that these coming up cities are well planned, we'll run into the same problem. Lastly, Madam Speaker, we need to decongest our city. It is common knowledge that even from the government services, some are still centered in Nairobi for no good reason, and people come to look for them. So if we are talking about decongesting Nairobi, those services need to be fully decentralized so people don't come to look for them in this region. At the same time, Madam Speaker, we need to look at job creations and opportunities for folks in the rural areas, like in their constituency, so that we can expand the opportunities to those areas. So long as these are not done, we can have super highways, trains, but people will still come here and we'll still have the congestion in the city. This bill is not going to cure. Cure is a medical term. I think a member for Nyeri used that. It's not going to go and cure this, but I think he will treat it to some extent, and we'll have flow of traffic in the city. Lastly, I would like to ask the originators of this bill to take seriously those who have criticized it, even as I support it, but take those observations seriously so we can have the best bill which is going to reduce our traffic congestion. So I support. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Very well, Honorable Martin Owino, the member for Ndiwa. Honorable members, the next on my request list, the member for, I cannot see him in the House, Kilifi North, put his card and he decided just to go and consult. The honorable member for Migori. Chiang Awo, should be told that she left her card in. Then I will give Siaya County Member of Parliament, Honorable Oduro Ombaka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I'd like to contribute to this bill because talking about road networks, expanding, improving them, and ensuring that people can use them safely is a key development issue. The road problems in this country is wide and it spans for many years. Not any one time are the roads for for vehicles, another one for the train. It's all integrated, but there's no confusion. Everybody's so disciplined on their lane. Nobody's interfering with anything. It's so beautiful, it's so nice. And I think we can learn from those countries. We've all traveled in this house. Most of us have traveled. The plan that we need to do is to put long-term plans for doing roads, for making roads. We are simply talking like we plan roads for 2 years, and then again you want to expand it, then you want to demolish certain homes or certain houses and buildings in order to expand the road system. I don't think what we are doing is right. I think what I'm beginning to see is that we do not plan well. We do not think ahead. We do not think that when you construct a road, it should be for 50 years and above. But we do two-year development plans, 5-year development plans. Before you know it, you are demolishing what you started 2 years ago. So I think we lack that, and that is what this authority should be focusing on. When it is put in place, when this bill goes through, then it should begin to think of how long do you want to improve a road. If you want to construct a road, like the thicker highway, which is so far the best in this country, and then suddenly you narrow down into a 2-lane system, it doesn't work. There was no thoughts put in place. Did we plan for 50 years and above, the population we shall have, the number of vehicles that will be running on that road? Those must be factored in when roads are being done. And that is why we lose it. That's why the roads are not as they are. For years on end, 50 and above years, Kenya still has not got the best roads. Yet Kenya leads in other areas. When it comes to the road network, the whole system, we are so poor. And Nairobi should set a pace because it's the capital. That should be followed immediately by other counties like Mombasa, Kisumu, Eldoret, and Nakuru. So every county, 47 of them, will require the roads to be improved in the standard that is required internationally, and so that everybody who lives in these areas will be able to enjoy using the road. Whether you are a cyclist, whether you are walking, whether you are on a bus or a train, we should be able to use the same road without interfering. Lastly, is the discipline that goes with the road system. We don't have any discipline at all. We just drive as though there are no road rules, overtaking at the wrong points, causing accidents. Crossing the road at the wrong time, overspeeding, no seat belts, simply no discipline. We abuse each other even as you overtake.
Sends more vehicles in the city, but they are still struggling to utilize the same networks. Unfortunately, you will also find, because of the human pressure.
And authority, in the case of London, the authority that owns the underground, the London Underground Limited, which runs the London Metropolitan Transport, is a local government authority. And therefore, my suggestion, Madam Speaker, my proposal is that we should then, after creating the authority, we should look at a more efficient system of running, because the authority and the council are really at a level not operational. If you recall, Madam Speaker, in our country we have created several authorities, and in the long run we have come down to inefficiencies which force us again to privatize. The reason why we go privatizing the parastatals we have created or other authorities is the nature of government, is that government cannot run a business. And I do agree with the honorable members who have suggested the question of looking at the private sector, the role of the private sector in all these things. So, and I think in the case of the London Metropolitan, we have an authority which is the Transport for London Authority, like the one we are creating. But under it, there's a wholly owned private enterprise, which runs like a private enterprise, which is the London Underground Limited. Now, in that case, we will be able to move our city to the level where that efficiency can be realized. So I want to support the bill that we need this authority, but we need to make sure that we make provision for it to be able to have an effect in terms of the efficiency we anticipate. Otherwise, if we leave it at the level of the authorities we know, the parastatals and authorities we have created, in the long run, the inefficiency, which of course is common with public enterprises, will creep in. So I support the bill with those amendments on the mandate and of course on bringing in the private enterprise role. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Kaunya Oku. The next on my request is the member, Honorable Nguna Ngusia. Nguna Ngusia.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute on this timely bill. Allow me to say that Nairobi, it controls almost 60% of our GDP. Number two, Nairobi is the only capital city in the world with a national park, and hence it's very important for tourism in this region. Not only this region, but also in Africa. Let me say that This bill, I'm rising to support it because I can see the multiplier effect it's going to have in our economy in Kenya. Number one, we have to note that we are losing almost 100 billion annually because of inefficient transport system in this country. And if you look at other developed cities in the world, especially London, New York, Athens, Greece, where I've lived for many years, I can say this system has really worked, but I'm supporting it.
Procedure for appointment of the chairperson of the board. Then there's the second schedule that contains provisions that on how to conduct business and affairs of this authority. The third schedule is the one that gives or contains the oath and affirmation to be taken by the chairperson and the director general and the members of the council. So, Madam Speaker, this is in line with the infrastructure policy and vision of the Jubilee government, that we allow even our matatu operators to come together with private, as the Mheshimiwa member from TESO said, that we pick some of the private sector players in the best of the best in the developed world who have done this integrated transport system to come and partner with our local transport lead persons, so that together we can form a very good integrated transport system which is efficient, which is effective, and which is sustainable for the long run. So, Madam Speaker, I am sure many members will bring amendments. I really, really want, if Makueni County is brought on board because of the Konza city, and then this becomes success story. Madam Speaker, there's a problem in Kenya. People fear. You know, this House passed, for example, Madam Speaker, when you were even the chair last time, the privatization bill. Now, some county governors don't want the sugar factories to be privatized. If they aren't privatized, then they will die. It's good you bring the best of the best, management, shareholding, inject more resources. In fact, as a leader from the pastoral communities, and the chair of agriculture is here, we want KMC to be privatized. Let KMC be privatized. Let it be given to some company that has market in the Middle East. Yeah, because as it is now, KMC is not helping us. It's not helping the country. We are pumping billions of shillings every year, and we don't see the value from Kibaki's time to now. So we want KMC to be privatized to an investor who will have the market. We go, he buys our goats and sheep and camels, he slaughters them, and then us is to breed. We breed the stock. And government cannot do business, as he said, it's true. County government, national government cannot do business. So we need to have the best, and this is the right bill. Madam Speaker, and I'm happy the Speaker has made his position known on the constitutionality of the bill. And Madam Speaker, I beg to second, I beg to move, and I hope when it comes for third reading, members will prepare, and the chair will prepare the necessary amendments. And let's go to the 0 hour. It's not happy hour, it's a 0 hour. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Surprising, the leader of majority is aware of the happy hour, which I don't know what it is. And thank you, leader of majority, for replying to the bill. Elder members and the leader of majority seemed either to be happy, concerned about what has happened in the Senate. And you being a leader of majority, you should be careful. I'm not, because your seat is secure. Of course, the leader of majority is doing his work. However, other members, I will not put the question to the bill because of obvious reasons, and maybe to remind the House that the House has been debating on the Nairobi Metropolitan Area Transport Authority, Bill, National Assembly Bill number 41 of 2017, that was rightly moved by the Leader of Majority. Was in the Committee of Transport, and I'm sure we have done a good job on this. So I do order that the question to this will be put in the next appropriate time. Honorable members, as communicated by the Speaker, and before then, which was stated by the Leader of Majority, we must go to the next order before what the Leader of Majority has stated. Next order.
Order number 10, the Irrigation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 46 of 2017, second reading.
Let me have the chair of the committee. Are you ready?
Yes, yes.
Or what do you have to say?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to seek extension of period for the consideration of Irrigation Bill number 46 of 2017 by 2 weeks from today, excluding the period when the House will be on recess, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Chair. Well put procedurally, honorable members.
Thank you.
I do order that the Irrigation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 46 of 2017, be deferred for the chairperson to be ready in the next 2 weeks, as he has rightly stated. Next order.
Zero hour.
Thank you, Honorable Madam Speaker.
Order. The Speaker has not even given you the chance to start. The happy hour is stated by the Honorable, and I must correct the Leader of Majority. It's the 0 hour.
Pursuant to Standing Order 43, I wish to make a statement regarding the continued harassment of the people of Mogotio constituency by forest officers under the pretext that they are engaging in charcoal trade and thus affecting the forest in the area. Honorable Madam Speaker, the people of Mogotio support the protection and conservation of forests. However, I wish to highlight that there is actually no forest located in Mogotio. Any charcoal used by residents is from individual farms, and more so from the Brisophyes chilofera plant popularly known as matenge. As far as I know, the charcoal trade has not been outlawed in this country. The ongoing ban is only on the cutting of trees in forests for charcoal production. I call upon the forest and police officers to desist from harassing young people on their private farms, release confiscated motorbikes, and work to reverse the hefty fines meted on my people by the courts for alleged charcoal trade in the forests. Thank you, Honorable Madam Speaker. That's my first statement.
Thank you. Let me allow you to do the second statement so that we can
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity also to make a second statement that there's been an invasion of elephants in Sinende location, Kisanana Division, Mogotio constituency. These elephants, Madam Speaker, last year invaded the same location and caused massive destruction of crops. They ate all the farm crops, and my constituents faced starvation. People are scared to venture out during the night and fear for their lives during the day while they graze the animals. I would like to say that the government has assisted greatly through provision of relief food. This year, the same beasts are becoming a menace. They have come from our neighboring county, Laikipia County. I hereby call on the KWS to take immediate action to relocate the elephants back to their board and ensure those affected are compensated. We are also staring at the possible massive losses this year since they have started destroying vegetation around. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, the Honorable Member for Mogoti, the Honorable Tuito
Mogotio.
Kamuren. Tuito Kamuren. Tuito
Yes.
Kamuren.
Yes.
And of course, the representative of the people of Mogoti. Thank you for prosecuting your two issues, and of course, under the 0 hour, and that the Speaker really encouraged during his communication before. Honorable members, I will give the members maybe to make comments on the same, and from my desk, maybe you can use only 2 minutes. Now the Speaker used 3 minutes per issue. I mean, not the Speaker, the mover, 2 minutes per issue. I can allow you at least 2 minutes to make a comment. Members, you can make a comment on the two issues, the one you think you can comment. The first one is a member for the member for Capsule, Were Ogond.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to contribute on the same. Actually, the game rangers are very notorious, including my constituencies. Actually, they invade and harass even the villagers, and that should be stopped. The other one, honorable members, we have a lot of dignity. Now, there's something which surprised me in my constituency. A former MP operating a terror gang called Tiacha, Homeboys. This MP, I'm not very happy with him. Last week when I was with my party leader, he came with the youths. So I will wish the police inspector general to look into that, because you know leadership you cannot be taken by force. I want him to retire, and luckily enough, he had served his 2 terms. With the 2 terms, he gets pension very, very well. But now, even if you want to be the governor of Homa Bay County, this is not the time to campaign. So I will wish all members, when we are serving, we use our money very, very well, so that by the time you are kicked out, you don't look so disparate. A good member of parliament should go out at least with a house in Nairobi. Not cases where we are seeing one worked very well for 2 terms, then now he goes in rural. You don't even have a decent home in Nairobi whereby you can be resting when youths are on you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is just a word of encouragement.
Thank you. I can tell it was just a word of encouragement. Honorable Leader of Majority, it was a word of encouragement. You want to speak to this?
Yes, Madam Speaker, you know, we have not been told what is the extent you can speak about this. Because, you know, this is a 0 hour. In the adjournment motion, normally, the one that we go on recess, you can speak on anything under the sun. But this one now is about forest, game wardens, and I am sure myself, Honorable Safula, Honorable for Kiminini, Chris Wamalwa, we are here for other business. So we are wondering how we are going to navigate. You know, our colleague is talking about his former, the man who he bet in the elections. And please, when you win, you become magnanimous. You don't want to go and step on that man. Give him the space. If he wants to live in the village, let him live in the village.
Thank you.
Yes, Madam Speaker, but I want to support the member for Mogotio, Raktari. Yes, KWS, they have mandate under the law. Kenya Forest Service, they have mandate under the law. But at the same time, they have, the Constitution has given mandate to how the people must be treated. You cannot use excessive force against innocent people. And particularly KWS, Madam Speaker, there is a tendency in our country where wild animals are more precious than human beings. You know that when a lion kills your cows, you keep quiet. But when you spear a lion, you are jailed for 20 years. I mean, we need to revisit that act. I think Parliament is the one that passed. We're going to look at it. We're going to look at the compensation. When elephants invade farms, when hippos invade farms and destroy, you know, farms that serious investment has gone into. So I really want to support my colleague, the member for Mogotio. Please keep up. I'm sure this 0 hour will be very, very popular. It will bring back members. I used to stay here at 6:30, Madam Speaker, and you and the clerks who are at the table, not more than 10 of us. But I'm sure the moment the word goes around that you can bring a 0 hour, the next Tuesday, the next 0 hour will not be about forest. It will be a very serious political issue that is happening in the country. I wish Honorable Moses Wetangula that all is not lost. You are a leader.